Your heartbeat is lying to you. The steady thump you feel in your chest masks a chaos of micro-variations, millisecond gaps between each beat that shift constantly. And buried inside that chaos is a pattern that, when activated, appears to bend probability itself. By the end of this, you'll understand why the rhythm of your heart may be the most overlooked force in conscious creation. In the 1990s, researchers at the Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research Lab ran one of the longest-running experiments in consciousness science. They sat ordinary people in front of random event generators, machines that produce a stream of ones and zeros with no pattern, like flipping a perfectly fair coin thousands of times per second. The task was simple. Influence the output with your mind. Push the numbers higher or lower than chance would predict. Over millions of trials, the data showed something that still makes materialist scientists uncomfortable. Human intention correlated with tiny but statistically significant deviations from randomness. The effect was small. It was also consistent, repeatable across decades and thousands of participants. The machines weren't broken. The statistics weren't flawed. Something was happening. But the effect varied wildly between sessions. The same person could produce strong deviations one day and nothing the next. So what changed between sessions? The answer didn't live in the mind, it lived in the chest. When the HeartMath Institute began cross-referencing REG experiment outcomes with physiological data, a pattern emerged that reframed everything. Participants who entered a state of cardiac coherence, a specific, measurable rhythm where the interval between heartbeats becomes smooth and wave-like, consistently produce stronger deviations from randomness. Participants in ordinary mental states, even focused ones, showed weaker or no effects. Think about what that means. The differentiator between someone who could nudge a random number generator and someone who couldn't had almost nothing to do with how hard they concentrated. It had to do with the rhythm happening beneath their ribs. Cardiac coherence is a specific physiological state. Your heart doesn't beat like a metronome. The gap between each beat fluctuates, sometimes 62 hundredths of a second, sometimes 68. This variation is called heart rate variability, and its pattern tells a story about your entire nervous system. In stress, the pattern looks jagged, chaotic, like static on a screen. In coherence, it becomes a smooth sine wave, ordered, harmonic. The shift between those two states changes more than your heart rhythm. Coherence synchronizes your breathing, your blood pressure oscillations, and your brain's electrical activity into a single unified frequency. Around 0.1 Hz, one cycle every 10 seconds, your body stops competing with itself and starts resonating as a single system. Neville Goddard described the ideal state for manifestation as a drowsy, feeling-saturated stillness. He called it the state akin to sleep. He never had access to heart rate monitors or EEG machines. Yet the physiological signature of that state, deep relaxation, emotional warmth, the body settled into coherent rhythm, maps almost perfectly onto what modern instruments measure as cardiac coherence. He found the frequency by feel. Decades later, sensors confirmed it. So why would a coherent heart have any relationship to a random event generator sitting on a table across the room? The conventional model says it shouldn't. Random means random. A machine spitting out ones and zeros based on quantum noise shouldn't care about your emotional state. And yet the correlation persists across hundreds of experiments, multiple labs, and thousands of hours of data. One framework worth sitting with comes from the Global Consciousness Project, which networked dozens of random event generators across the world and monitored them continuously. During events of mass emotional coherence, minutes of silence after tragedies, midnight on New Year's Eve across time zones, moments of collective focus, the network showed correlated deviations from randomness. Machines on different continents, with no physical connection, drifting in the same direction at the same time. The individual reg experiments mirror this at a personal scale. When your internal state achieves coherence, you become a localized version of that same phenomenon. A single nervous system resonating at a unified frequency, and the random system in proximity reflects that order. The skeptic's objection writes itself. Correlation proves nothing about causation. Maybe coherent people just measure differently. Maybe there's an electromagnetic artifact. These are fair challenges, and they were tested: shielded rooms, distance experiments, automated protocols with no human near the machine during measurement windows. The effect attenuated with some controls and persisted through others. The picture is messy, like all frontier science. What never disappeared was the coherence correlation. Here's where the inner work becomes concrete. Coherence is trainable. 5 minutes of slow breathing, roughly 6 breaths per minute, while holding genuine appreciation or care in your awareness, will shift your heart rhythm into coherence. HeartMath documented this across thousands of subjects. The key word is genuine. You can fake the breathing rate. You cannot fake the emotional tone. Mechanical breathing without feeling produces a partial coherence at best. The heart's rhythm responds to the quality of emotion flowing through your awareness, with a sensitivity that makes lie detectors look crude. This is where most people stall. They learn the technique, practice it twice, feel a warm buzz, and assume they've mastered it. Then they try to manifest, from a state of anxious wanting, with their heart rhythm spiking like a seismograph. The coherence vanishes the moment genuine desire mixes with genuine doubt. Sustaining coherence under emotional pressure is the real discipline. It's the spiritual equivalent of holding a yoga pose when your muscles are screaming. Your body wants to return to its habitual chaos. Your nervous system has grooves worn deep by years of reactive patterns. The jolt of checking your phone, the clench of anticipating bad news, the low hum of background worry you've carried so long, it feels like personality. Every spiritual tradition that speaks of inner stillness is describing, in its own vocabulary, the process of training your system into coherent rhythm despite external provocation. The Sufi heart practices. The Jesus prayer synchronized with breathing. The Hindu emphasis on the heart center as the seat of consciousness. They converge on the same target through different doors. Rumi wrote that the quieter you become, the more you can hear. He was describing an acoustic principle applied to consciousness. Noise obscures signal. When your internal state is jagged and reactive, you're broadcasting static. When it smooths into coherence, you become something closer to a tuning fork, a system vibrating at a single clear frequency. The random event generator research suggests that this coherent signal interacts with probabilistic systems in ways current physics can describe statistically but cannot explain mechanically. That gap between description and explanation is where the mystery lives. And the honest response to mystery is engagement, not dismissal. Your practice then is specific. Train coherence daily. 6 breaths per minute, heart-centered attention, a feeling of genuine gratitude or love held steady for 5 minutes, then 10, then 20. Notice when the feeling slips into performance, when you're trying to feel grateful rather than actually touching the thing you're grateful for. The difference is everything. One is theater, the other reshapes your heart rhythm in real time. Then, carry that coherence into your assumptions about reality. When Neville said to feel the wish fulfilled, he was prescribing a coherence practice without the vocabulary of biophysics. The fulfilled wish, genuinely felt, produces a smooth emotional tone. Longing produces jagged spikes. Fear of failure produces jagged spikes. Obsessive checking for results produces jagged spikes. The felt reality of already having what you desire, that settles the heart into exactly the kind of rhythm that correlates with anomalous influence on random systems. The implication sits heavy if you let it land. Every moment of anxiety about your desire is actively working against the coherence required to influence probability. Every moment of desperate wanting fragments the very signal that the research shows matters. The traditions that counsel surrender and trust weren't offering comfort. They were offering physics dressed in the only language available at the time. You've spent years trying to manifest through mental effort, visualization, affirmation, repetition. And some of it worked, sometimes. The variable you weren't tracking was your heart. The 6 inches of space behind your sternum where emotion becomes rhythm, and rhythm becomes, if the data is pointing where it seems to point, a force that touches the world beyond your skin. Tonight, before sleep, try one thing. Close your eyes. Place your attention in your chest. Breathe slowly. And instead of asking for what you want, feel what it would feel like to already have it. Stay there until your body softens, until the grasping dissolves, until the feeling is so real that wanting becomes unnecessary. That smooth, warm, settled hum you feel when you get it right, your heart is literally changing its rhythm in that moment. Machines in laboratories have registered what happens next. Your life is the next laboratory. The instrument is already beating inside your chest.